When 1914 dawned, the people of Hertford knew it was to be a momentous year. The town was to celebrate 1,000 years since its founding by the Saxon king Edward the Elder. Many English towns date from the 900s, and it had become a trend to celebrate these anniversaries with a grand pageant depicting episodes in the history of the area. St Albans had held a huge pageant in July 1907, boasting a cast of 2,000 people. Hertford was not to be outdone and brought in Charles Ashdown, a retired teacher who had written and directed the St Albans pageant. Mr Ashdown decided he would need 1,000 performers and a budget of £1,750. The event was scheduled to run over 6 days from the 29th of June in the grounds of Hertford Castle. The town had less than 6 months to get everything in place, but pageant fever quickly took hold.
I have told Mother 12 yards of green velvet. I cannot settle for less if this is to be done properly. As usual, she wasn't listening to me. The older generation does not take anything seriously. Why do I have to be Dame? Not everyone can be a lady, says my sister, Lady Isolde. She could have kept her own name. Isabel sounds perfectly medieval, but she thinks Isolde is more tragic. Count yourself lucky to be a lady in waiting. Most people are just crowd, she says. I don't care. I have my own plan to fulfil my dreams.
Apparently, I am Sir Percival.
Know-it-all Mother says I will bake to death on a hot summer's day in 12 yards of velvet. She doesn't understand the true meaning of the pageant. To celebrate 1,000 years of history will demand sacrifices of us all. What about the Saxons who will have to wear itchy Hessian tunics for hours? Mother says the Saxons are mostly tradespeople, so they're used to that kind of thing. And besides, Mr Ashdown has had difficulty recruiting Saxons, as all the young men want to be knights in shining armour, which just goes to show, she says, that the boys are as empty-headed as the girls.
In Richard's barn today, practising with swords. Mr Ashdown, the pageant master, wants us to have papier-mâché swords which would be unspeakable. So Richard got the blacksmith to bash out a couple of broadswords, and Harry fixed his territorial's bayonet on a pole to make a lance. It looks jolly good. The swords were heavy, and I didn't fancy fighting with them in chainmail. But Harry says the chainmail will just be a knitted tunic painted silver. Richard says we must practice sword fighting on horseback. He's going to tell the costume ladies to make a comparison for Blaze. I bet he wants to impress Harry's sister. I wonder if I could put a comparison on socks.
Our first rehearsal today in the castle grounds. It was utterly chaotic. The older generation does not know how to organise anything. Most of the crowd simply didn't turn up. Mr Ashdown was steaming. He said 700 of the folk of Hertford clamoured to take part in this historic event, and only 50 were there this afternoon. The others were put off by a little downpour. What if Alfred the Great had decided not to fight the Danes beside the Lee because it was raining? Would the Normans have given Hertford a miss because it was a bit damp? Suppose Queen Elizabeth hadn't visited Hertford Castle in 1561, as it was a rather chilly day. We would have no 1,000 years of history to celebrate. He ranted on like this for a while. After that, he made us stand here, then stand there, then stand here again. Isabel will not be able to display her famous dramatic skills because he does not want us to do anything. Just stand where he puts us. However, I learnt something useful. Mr Balfour, the old Prime Minister who was once our MP, will be attending on Wednesday the 1st of July. He's to be given the freedom of the borough. Perhaps Wednesday should be the day.
Harry is going to be Sir Galahad, and Richard wants to be Sir Lancelot. Legendary lover, he said. Legendary idiot, I said. He tried to duff me up, so I duffed him up.
Went with Mamma to her Women's Suffrage Society meeting last night so that I could take the minutes as their secretary was in London. It was interminably dreary as usual. When will the older generation ever do anything except talk? How will that get us the vote? They mentioned Constance Lytton in their usual disapproving tones. I said nothing. She's been released from prison and is back at Nebworth House gravely ill, but refusing to renounce her suffragette activity. I resolved to write to her and urge her to stay strong. They decided the Women's Suffrage Society might have a stall on the fringes of the pageant. And perhaps a banner. A banner! I despair. Isabel and I went over to the barn to see the boys rehearsing. Her brother Harry told us to get lost. He said girls weren't allowed in episode 4 of the pageant, the siege of Hertford Castle in 1216, and the most important episode of the lot. But we said, what is the point of being a valiant defender if you've got no damsels to defend? Harry is a dimwit. He was there, looking like a true knight. He had a sword. It's frightfully heavy. I told him he must have wonderful muscles. Unfortunately, we didn't get much chance to talk, as he was having difficulty putting a caparison on his horse.
Hellish news! We're not allowed to bring our horses. Mr. Ashdown says there will be no room. The pageant is a week away, but my heart is no longer in it. Everyone agrees Mr. Ashdown is a bossy prig.
Costume fitting today in the castle. Pageant house, as it has become. The entire building is full of people sewing ruffs and making papier-mâché swords. My dress is perfect. The fitted bodice, the long sleeves echoing the sweep of the flowing skirt. Green suits me wonderfully. In the mirror I could see that I was noble, yet mysterious. My whole demeanour telling of a magical time of valiant deeds and lost love.
Well, this is it. The time for play acting is over. Richard's cousin, who is an equerry to Lord Salisbury himself, has received intelligence that the pageant could be disrupted by subversive elements. They're keeping this hush-hush. Naturally, they don't want the ladies and the ordinary people to panic, but they need fellows like us to be ready to snap into action on an instant. The problem is that the whole world knows about this pageant. The Millinery Committee has printed thousands of copies of the Hertford pageant booklet and sent it out all over London to attract visitors. But who else is it going to attract? Richard's cousin says it's pretty clear that a fine patriotic spectacle like this will rouse the enmity of numerous groups who wish to bring this country down. Fenians, anarchists, suffragettes, German spies. Anyway, the first Hertford Boy Scouts are going to camp in the castle grounds the week before the pageant to guard against saboteurs.
Izzy refuses to take off her costume and moons around the house in it like the Lady of Shalott. They have made me a dress from what looks like an old flour sack. I'm saying nothing. I'm not planning to attract attention by my clothes. I have 2 cans of paraffin. All I need now is matches.
Excellent news! Harry and I are to man one of the trebuchets. We can't wait!
The first day of the pageant, and we've been here since 7 o'clock this morning, even though the whole thing doesn't start till 3 p.m. I was very glad of my velvet, as it was miserably cold at first. Lady Isolde was a shivering mass of goose pimples and as blue as her dress. The day is actually quite hot now.
We're supposed to be forming an order on the East Lawn before it's our turn to go, but those idiots in episode 5 about King John of France and King David Bruce of Scotland, whom absolutely no one cares about, even if they are played by Mr. Philip Longmore and Mr. Frank Page, our finest thespians, supposedly, managed to get themselves in front of episode 6. That was funny, because episode 6 is the presentation of a charter to Hertford in 1451 by Queen Margaret of Anjou, but nothing whatsoever happens in it except stuck-up Risa Barclay as Margaret, in a white robe and ridiculous headdress with a ton of paste jewels, prances about on a horse, thinking everyone is admiring her, when in fact she has a face like a prize bull, and we are just agog at that headdress and waiting for it to fly off in the wind like a giant sparkly seagull. So they were all in a flap, and Rissa's horse nearly bolted, which gave Izzy and me a great laugh. Izzy's sister was chortling too, although I don't know what she's got to laugh about, as they put her in a dress which makes her look like a suet pudding in a cloth. The boys are very preoccupied with their catapult contraptions.
Harry and I are the Dauphin's men besieging Hertford Castle. No idea why. Naturally, we win as we have the best trebuchets, but we are magnanimous in victory and congratulate the plucky English garrison. It is hard work, loading and firing the siege engines, but we send those papier-mâché stones flying. I never thought it would be such fun to be French.
I despair. 3/4 of the population of self-satisfied Hertford turning out to watch the other quarter act out great moments in our history. No, not even act. Most of them posing like wax dummies while the chosen ones spout cod Shakespeare, so that we can congratulate ourselves on how we've evolved from benighted Saxon peasants to glorious Edwardians, the pinnacle of civilization. Where is the mud? Where are the wars? The looting, the killing? Where's the disease? Where is the ignorance, the labour, the shortened lives? Where are the voiceless? Oh, it really is terribly hot. After yesterday's rain, I thought it might be cooler today, but it's like the tropical house at Kew. Today is our last siege of Hertford. The real siege lasted nearly a month, and honestly, it cannot have been more tedious than these past 6 days. Our episode has some exciting moments, especially when the French fire real arrows, but mainly it's men with tabards and shields standing around talking. The first episode, The Synod of Hertford, is a lot of bishops standing around talking. The second episode is Alfred the Great and some Saxons standing around talking. In the third episode, The Founding of Hertford in 914, people sit around on horseback talking. Then it's us. Then it's King John and David Bruce standing around talking. Then Risa Barclay prancing around but mercifully not talking. Then more bishops. Then the last episode with Catherine Puller being good Queen Bess in a gorgeous outfit, and a lot of poetry and dreary dancing. I have hardly been able to speak to him at all, but when we line up, I always make sure we stand together. Our elbows touch and I feel a surge of warmth flow between us. I know he feels it too.
What are we doing? Why am I standing in line here with Issy's friend nudging me in the ribs for some reason, when the enemy is at the gates? No, inside the gates, in the crowd, plotting untold madness. We know who they are now. Fenians. We've been extra alert today as the whole week has been so quiet. We knew they were biding their time, and then today Harry distinctly heard an Irish voice. We were on his tail and nearly had him when Mr. Ashdown hauled us back to do our episode. Curse luck! Damn this trebuchet! The spring has rusted in the rain. I'm trying to pull the thing back and people are laughing. You feel a fool when your mighty siege engine can only manage to hurl a papier-mâché stone a couple of yards. As soon as we're finished here, we're going to hunt those Irishmen down. Let's break a few heads, and that will teach them to threaten peaceful people. They don't know what's coming to them. Bayonets are ready, Harry!
After this, there are 4 more episodes, then a closing ceremony. Yesterday I hid the paraffin cans down at the entrance to the dungeons. People are milling in and out of the castle now, but it will be quiet when they gather for the final speeches. I'm glad I decided not to throw rotten eggs at Mr. Balfour. It would have been a superficial gesture, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. If women are to make our voices heard, we have to do real damage.
That was a bit close. All of a sudden, it was raining death. The archers sent a whole slew of arrows over the grandstand and practically into their own ranks. There was no need for Izzy to shriek like that, although the boys did look this way when she screamed. What can I do to make him take notice of me? It's obvious this pageant has been very dull for a man of action who's in the territorials. His heart is set on adventure. Our episode is finally over and we can leave the arena. I have a plan.
What fools we've been. There were no Fenians. The Irishman was Dr. Boyd from Ware, and the true enemy has been staring us in the face all this time. Suffragettes. The scouts saw a woman with mad eyes get off the Great Eastern train carrying something like a rolled-up banner. Suffragettes are the worst kind of foe. Hysterical, violent, unpredictable. They will throw themselves in front of anything. This is the moment us territorials have been training for. Defending our home. Defending England.
The best room in the castle will be the one with the tapestry chairs. I'll soak the cushions in paraffin. Maybe splash a little on the curtains too, and they'll burn like billy-o.
St. George can only love the damsel he rescues from the dragon. I'll throw myself before the beast, and my knight's blood will be on fire as he breaks my chains with his mighty sword.
They're attacking! While the bigwigs are giving speeches, the suffragettes have attacked the castle. I can hear screaming. It's coming from the gate into the dungeons. The dungeons! They're going to blow the place up like Guy Fawkes. Can we get there in time? No sign of Lord Salisbury. The older generation seems to be blind to the trouble brewing. Never mind. We can handle it. One of the scouts says the suffragettes have captured Lady ROWENA and she's calling for me. Must be one of Issy's friends. Yes, I can hear her. Help me, I'm trapped in the dungeons. Let me through. There's a crowd of useless bystanders. Queen Margaret of Anjou is blocking the gates. Out of my way, woman. Queen Elizabeth has called her aside. More screaming. There's someone on the ground. It looks like Issy's sister. They must have got her first. Good Lord. Richard's found a couple of cans of paraffin. That gives us an idea. Plenty of dead leaves in the shrubbery. We'll light a fire and smoke the harpies out. This is terrific. Filthy smoke is filling the dungeons, but they're not coming out. Right, Harry and I are going in after them. Thankfully we've got our bayonets. Queen Bess has ripped the veil off Queen Margaret's headdress for me to use as a mask. It's choking down in the tunnel. Can't see a thing. Percival! She's definitely screaming my name. Could be a trap. Suppose I get to her and a couple of suffragettes pounce. There she is. Can't see anyone else. She's shrieking her head off. Clearly hysterical, but I know what to do. A smart slap to the face. Oh. Harry, can you give me a hand? She hit her head on the wall and seems to be out cold. We'll have to drag her. You take her other foot. Luckily, Dr. Boyd is on hand. He says she'll be fine soon. Probably won't remember a thing when she wakes up. The suffragettes have got away. We should have posted a man at the exit to the tunnels. What cursed luck.
My life is over.
Richard's cousin came to thank us personally. Apparently, Lord Salisbury didn't want to say anything in public for fear of causing a fuss, but privately he's very grateful. Mr. Ashdown is oblivious to the fact that his pageant was nearly a catastrophe. His head is completely swelled with so many people congratulating him on the event. It's all in the planning, he keeps saying. A successful operation is planned with military precision. It's a day to remember. A day to remember? I should say so. The 4th of July, 1914. It'll be a very long time before anything tops it. In fact, life is going to be a bit of a letdown after this. Still, we've got cadet training camp next month. That'll be a laugh.
I woke up. The evening sun was in my face, and there was a strange smell of paraffin in the air. I closed my eyes and saw him coming out of the smoke, coughing and soot-stained, to rescue me.
Look at them. Laughing. Sunburn. Drunk. Fancy costumes bedraggled. Months and hours of work gone in a day. This'll all be forgotten, and life will go on the same as ever. Dull, dull, dull. But I can wait. They'll be sorry soon. They don't know what's coming. The Enemy at the Gates was written by Kate Miller and features in the book Heart of Herts. It is based on a real event, the Hertford pageant, but the specific storyline is fictional. This film was voiced, recorded and edited by Vicky Holden-Swinton, with the character of Sir Percival and the introduction voiced by Dan Swinton. It was produced for Hertfordshire Year of Culture.